There are things we shouldn't play with. Certain limits that once crossed can no longer be undone. That night, we didn't just cross those limits. We tore up all the warnings. My name is Matthias. I was never someone who believed in these stories, spirits, curses, magic boards. But that night, everything changed. We decided to play Ouija just out of curiosity, just to see if anything happened. What we didn't know was that someone was waiting on the other side. And when you call, he comes. If you think the Ouija board is just a toy, maybe you haven't heard of Zozo yet. But once you do, there's no forgetting. This video isn't just a report, it's a warning. Maybe you think there's still time to stop. Maybe you think turning off the video protects you, but listen to what I'm telling you. From the moment you hear his name, even by accident, you've already opened the door. And now that it's started, you're part of it too. The first time I saw a Ouija board was on an old forum, one of those that still looked like badly formatted HTML, with a black background and flashing red letters. I must have been about 15. The image showed a stained board, with the alphabet engraved in dark wood and a teardrop-shaped object, the planchette, over the letter Z. At the time, I thought it was ridiculous, but even so, I saved the image to my computer. I don't know why. Years later, when the idea of filming a real horror video began to take shape, the Ouija board was the first thing that came to mind. Perhaps because it seems harmless. A piece of wood with letters and numbers, a game. But the truth is, it was never just a game. The Ouija board emerged in the 19th century amidst the spiritualist movement that began to grow in the United States. At the time, many people were trying to communicate with the dead, especially during and after the American Civil War. Families devastated by losses sought answers, and mediums began to use objects like the Ouija to try and find them. But it wasn't just in private sessions. In 1891, the board began to be sold commercially as a toy by the Kennard Novelty Company. And later, in the 60s, Parker Brothers, the same company that produced Monopoly, bought the rights and turned the Ouija into a sales success. Thousands of people started playing with it as if it were a pastime. Only the strange reports never stopped. People saying they heard knocks on the walls, that they saw shadows moving, that they dreamed of red eyes watching from the bedroom door, and in many cases, the name was always the same, Zozo. That's when everything started to seem more serious to me, because it didn't matter if the report was from a boy in Arizona or a woman in New York. The name Zozo appeared, again and again, always in the same way. First the pointer moved slowly, hesitantly, and then it began to spell Z-O, Z-O. A guy posted something on Reddit that never left my mind. He wrote, "We were just playing for fun. When it started spelling Zozo, my brother froze. Blood started to drip from his nose and he fainted. He never wanted to talk about it again. He never touched the board again." This kind of thing seemed too much like a lie to be taken seriously. But there was something in the consistency of these reports, in the way they all seemed to repeat the same details, that made it unsettling. As if everyone was seeing the same figure in different places. And there were the rules. Whenever someone talked about the Ouija board, in reports, in forums, even in old videos, the same warnings came up. They weren't suggestions. They were commandments, almost like a survival code. Never play alone. Never ask about your own death, or that of another person. Always say goodbye at the end of the session. Never take your fingers off the planchette before saying goodbye. And perhaps the most important, never mock what comes from the other side. These rules haunted me. They were in all the stories, as if they had been engraved in the wood along with the letters. And whenever someone broke one of these rules, something went wrong. I remember a specific video, two guys sitting in a dark garage with the board on a small table. One of them laughs while asking if he's going to die soon. The other takes his hand off the planchette to answer his cell phone. The recording shakes, cuts, and the screen goes dark for a second. When it comes back, one of the guys is alone, the other is no longer there. I never found the continuation of that video. It was after delving into these cases for weeks that I started to wonder if it was all just collective suggestion, like those urban legends that multiply because people want to believe. But the more I read, the more the pattern repeated itself. The rules, the name, the abrupt ending. It was as if there was a consciousness behind everything, using the Ouija as a gateway, as if it wasn't just a channel, but the very origin of fear. Even so, we decided to play. I mean, the idea was to use all of this as a backdrop for the video, the mystery, the warnings, the name Zozo. I had already read so much, seen so much content on the subject, that I knew exactly how to make it engaging for the camera. But what I didn't know was what came after pressing record. Because until then, it all still seemed like just a good script idea. Before recording, I put together a file on my computer with dozens of reports. I selected the strangest, the most intense ones. I wanted to mention some in the video just to create the right atmosphere. There was one that particularly struck me. A couple from Georgia said they tried a session as a joke, but soon the pointer started moving on its own. At first it seemed random, but then it spelled Zozo, and when they asked who it was, the electronic device in the room burned out. Their dog, who had been sleeping until then, started to howl looking at the ceiling, and the digital clock showed exactly 3:17 a.m. This time appeared too often. It was as if Zozo left a reminder etched in time, marking the hour he crossed over, as if that was the breach. I started to wonder if the board even needed to be present, because in many accounts, just talking about it, just repeating the name, things already started to happen. A type of mental contagion, a link. And if that was really it, maybe he was listening, maybe he was waiting. The week before the video, I dreamed 3 times of the same sound, a long creak, followed by a dry thud, like a door that won't open. I always woke up at the same time, 3:17. I thought it was a coincidence. Maybe my brain was just mixing the reports with the fear I was feeding myself. But one thing stuck with me. In the last of these dreams, before waking up in a cold sweat, I heard a phrase spoken by a voice that seemed to come from inside the house, but also from inside my head. You already know my name, and I did. The name wasn't just a sequence of letters, it was a presence, and the more you said it, the closer it got, as if each letter pulled the next part of something ancient that should never have been called. The board, at that point, no longer seemed like an object. It seemed like an invitation. It was that night that I wrote the rules in my notebook as if they were a ritual, a form of protection. I put a sticky note on the camera with the reminders. Don't play alone. Don't ask about death. Always say goodbye. Never take your fingers off. Never mock. Never mock. I repeated that several times before going to sleep, as if I was already preparing myself to fail. And deep down, I think I knew we would fail. Because no story involving the Ouija board ends with, and then everything worked out. It always ends when something crosses over. And when it crosses over, it doesn't go back alone. I remember that same morning I went to the kitchen to drink water and saw my reflection in the window pane. But for a fraction of a second, I had the impression that the reflection was still there when I turned my face. It wasn't clear, not a defined figure. It was just an uncomfortable sensation of delay, as if there was a visual echo following me. Maybe it was just sleep. Maybe I was already too impressed with everything. But the feeling hasn't left me since. It was as if something was waiting for me to take the next step, as if it had patience and plenty of time. The next day, I went back to watching the old videos I had downloaded. Some were corrupted, others, well, Others were no longer on my hard drive. They disappeared, without a trace, and I was absolutely sure they were there. The first time I mentioned the idea of recording the video with the Ouija board was in a casual conversation with two of my closest friends, Lucas and Erica. We had made other videos before, nothing too serious. Some urban explorations, visits to abandoned places, things like that. But this idea was different. Lucas was the first to laugh. He always laughed. Not because he found it funny, but because he didn't take almost anything seriously. He's the kind of person who watches a horror movie and roots for the monster to win, skeptical to the bone. For him, anything that can't be measured or touched is nonsense. And he loves to provoke. "All right," he said, "if we're going to record a video summoning a demon, let it be in style." That made me laugh, too, but not in the same way. Lucas laughed out of mockery. I laughed out of nervousness. Erica was different. When she heard the idea, she was silent. For a few seconds, too long. Then she said, "Are you sure you really want to play with this?" Her voice was always calm, low, as if she was never in a hurry to say things. Erica was the opposite of Lucas, introspective, too sensitive to what others didn't perceive. She had already mentioned that when she was a child, she dreamed of a woman in white standing at her bedroom door, and that these dreams returned whenever something bad was about to happen. The combination of the three, me, the curious one, Lucas, the mocker, Erica, the sensitive one, seemed strangely balanced. Perhaps that's why I insisted. Or perhaps because, deep down, I wanted to see what would happen when that balance was broken. We decided to film in an abandoned house on the outskirts of Flagstaff, Arizona. I had known the place since high school, but had never dared to go there at night. It was the kind of house you hear about in local stories. That's where a family disappeared in the 90s. The basement has things written on the walls. No one can stay there for more than 20 minutes without feeling sick. Most of these stories were probably made up. But they all had one thing in common. No one had lived there for decades. And those who entered usually didn't come back with good memories. The house was isolated, at the end of a dirt road that looked more like a poorly traced trail through the trees. We arrived in the late afternoon, with the golden sunlight filtering through the pine treetops and casting long shadows on the ground. In the car trunk, flashlights, cameras, tripods, the Ouija board, some candles and extra batteries. Part of me still thought it was just good content, but another part was already uncomfortable just being there. When we crossed the rusty gate, the wind blew hard and raised a small cloud of dust. The crickets, which had been a constant soundtrack, until then, suddenly stopped. Everything became quieter than it should have been. A loaded, heavy silence. Lucas commented, laughing, "Well, even the animals left." Erica said nothing. She just looked at the upper floor of the house, as if she had sensed something. The porch floor creaked under our feet. The front door was already ajar. It was made of solid wood, but it had scratch marks on the bottom, as if some animal had tried to get in or out. The house inside was dark, even with the late afternoon light still entering through the cracks. The air smelled of old things, mixed with mold and dust, but what caught my attention was the temperature. Outside it was hot, dry, as is common in Arizona. But inside, it seemed like a different climate. A cold that made no sense. We turned on our flashlights and began to explore room by room. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Old furniture, faded wallpaper, signs of leaks. But the silence remained strange, as if we were being watched, even with no one there. In one of the bedrooms, the ceiling creaked so loudly that Lucas was genuinely startled. He pretended not to be, but I saw him grip his flashlight tighter. It was as if the house had spines that responded to our presence. That's when we heard the first sound. It came from upstairs, a long noise like chains being dragged. Lucas turned immediately. Erica took a step back. I, on impulse, started recording. We decided to set up the equipment in the old living room, where natural light could still enter through the cracks in the broken windows. The floor was dark wood, covered by a dusty rug that seemed to have been forgotten since the 1980s. Lucas swept the center of the room with his foot and joked about it being dirtier than his refrigerator. I was setting up the cameras while Erica prepared the candles. No one said anything out loud, but the atmosphere had changed. The cold was constant now. It didn't come in gusts. It didn't seem to come from outside. It was as if the house exhaled that temperature, as if it breathed beneath our skin. Set up the tripod. Position the central camera. Turn on the lavalier microphones. The sequence was almost mechanical, but the movement of my hands didn't stop my mind from racing. With every creak of the roof, every whistle of the wind, I looked around. The house seemed to breathe with us, as if it was paying attention. Lucas tested the board with his fingers. "Come on, great Zozo," he said theatrically. "I hope you're watching." I was about to tell him to stop, but Erica was quicker. "Don't provoke," she said dryly. And it was the first time I heard her voice waver. The tension was like an overstretched wire. And when we turned off the flashlight to light only the candles, I realized how truly dark the place was. The gloom swallowed the corners of the house. The flame trembled, casting shadows against the cracked walls. It was at that moment that I noticed something strange. The temperature seemed to drop every time we got close to the board, as if it generated the cold itself. I touched the planchette with my fingertips and felt that it was too cold to be inside. A house without electricity. Lucas did the same thing and commented, "You put this in the freezer before, right?" No one laughed. While we were finishing the adjustments, we heard the sound again. This time closer, clearer. A deep, dragging sound, like something being pulled across the floor upstairs. We all stood still, trying to identify if it was just an old structure reacting to the wind. But none of us believed that anymore. Not after what we saw immediately afterwards. One of the pictures hanging on the wall, an old portrait of a woman smiling with her head slightly tilted, was facing the wall. No one remembered touching it. I was the only one who noticed. I didn't comment at the time. I just filmed discreetly. As night fell, the silence outside became even denser. No sound of crickets, no rustling of leaves, only the sound from inside the house. And not every sound seemed to have an origin. With all the equipment ready, we sat on the floor around the board, each with a different expression. Lucas with his usual cynicism, pretending to be bored. Erica quiet, with trembling hands. I trying to maintain control, but with my heart racing. And then the sudden drop in temperature happened, this time stronger, more evident. My arms got goosebumps. The main camera made a dry click, as if it had turned off and on again. And from somewhere inside the house came a muffled sound. 3 knocks, strong, spaced out. Lucas looked at me. "Did you hear that?" I just shook my head. There was no more room for doubt. All of this was happening. The house was reacting to our presence. The environment seemed to mold itself to our movements, as if we were being waited for. When we turned the main light back on to review the camera positions, we noticed that one of the candles had gone out on its own. The flame had not extinguished naturally. The wick was still smoking, but it looked twisted, as if someone had pinched the flame until it disappeared. It was a small detail, but it was enough to make Erica utter the phrase no one wanted to hear. "He already knows we're here." We sat around the board as if we were about to do something very simple. 3 people, 3 flashlights off, only the candles providing that warm, weak light, flickering in silence. The wooden floor felt colder than before. The air was still. Lucas looked around, smiling as if all of it was just a show. Erica adjusted her posture, slowly crossing her legs. keeping her hands in her lap. I took a deep breath. I knew that from the moment our fingers touched the planchette, we would cross a line, and it might be too late to go back. We gently placed our fingers on the wooden object. It was light, with rounded edges, and seemed harmless. The kind of thing you might find at a craft fair if you didn't know what it represented. We were silent for a few seconds, just listening to the rustling of the wind against the side of the house and the soft creaks of the aged structure. I was the first to speak. We are here in peace. We just want to communicate. If there is anyone, tell us. The planchette didn't move. Lucas sniffed and said quietly, "Maybe it's lunchtime." I almost smiled, but I held back. A few more seconds of waiting. Nothing. I tried again. "If there is any presence here, give a sign. You can use the board." For an instant, I thought something had happened. The flame of the candle on the left flickered more than usual, but it remained lit. Then, very slowly, the planchette moved. 1 millimeter, then another. All 3 hands followed together. None of us pushed. It was as if it had a will of its own, but a shy one. The letter it pointed to was an A. Then it stopped. Lucas looked at me and raised an eyebrow. I didn't respond. "Who is here with us?" I asked. This time, it moved to B, then R. Then it stopped again. It was like watching an old radio trying to tune into a weak station. Erica was breathing deeply, but she didn't take her eyes off the board. The planchette remained hesitant. D. O. Long pause. T. Lucas murmured, "Don't," and let out a nervous laugh. That's when the center candle went out of nowhere. The flame shrunk as if it had been swallowed. The smell of burnt wax filled the room. The shadows lengthened around. And at that instant, the lightness that still existed evaporated. It was the wind, Lucas tried to say, but the window was closed and there was no draft. The planchette moved again, slowly. C. T. O. P. "Stop," Erica repeated in a low voice. She seemed paler than usual. We left our hands there, trying to understand if someone was moving it on purpose. But there was no resistance, no clear direction. It was like being pulled by a weak but persistent magnet. I asked another question. "Do you want us to stop?" Silence. The object slid slowly to Y. Lucas cleared his throat. "Okay, this part is getting good." Before I could answer, a dry creak came from the hallway door. It wasn't loud, but it was so out of place in that absolute silence that all 3 of us turned at the same time. The door didn't move, but the sound was there, as if someone had stepped on one of the floorboards. Lucas stopped smiling. I used the pause to try and end it. "We're going to say goodbye now. Thank you, and goodbye." I guided the planchette to the word goodbye in the bottom corner of the board. Erica followed. Lucas hesitated but went along, but the wood didn't stop. Even with our fingers on it, even with our attempt to end the session, the object resisted. It tried to go back to the center. It went back to the letter Z, then O, and then it stopped, as if it was waiting for our reaction. "We're going to stop," I said more firmly. We took our hands off at once. The right candle went out, and in that second, something changed in the room. There was no wind, there was no open window, but 2 candles had gone out on their own. And the board felt warm to the touch, as if someone had run their hand over it moments before. Erica closed her eyes for an instant. We're not alone. And it was only then, at that exact moment, that Lucas didn't respond with a joke. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The three of us sat there around the board with the candlelight dim, the sound of our own bodies being the only audible thing. Breathing, heartbeats, the click of dry throats. It was as if the environment had swallowed us, as if we were just three more objects in the middle of that house, forgotten by time. Lucas finally broke the silence, his voice lower than usual. "Are we going to continue?" I didn't answer immediately. I was looking at the board as if expecting it to say something on its own, as if something inside it was still waiting for our permission. But the planchette was motionless now. Quiet. Dead. Erica took a small cord with a pendant from her pocket. I had never seen her wear it before. She held it tightly but discreetly, and that gave me an idea that she felt more than she let on. "Let's try one more time. No jokes, no stupid questions, just one more time." They nodded, and we placed our fingers back on the planchette. I asked a new question, trying to keep my voice steady. "If you're still here, say your name." Nothing. The silence stretched out again, filling every corner of the house, until it moved, slowly, slower than before. The tip dragged as if something was pushing with effort. H, then E, then L, and then P. "Help," Erica murmured. "It's asking for help." Lucas frowned. "Or it's pretending." It moved again. E. "Help me." It was at that moment that one of the secondary cameras made a dry click and the screen light went out. It didn't turn off completely, but the red LED was blinking, which meant something had interfered with the recording. "Did someone touch it?" I asked. No one had moved. The camera was 2 meters away from us, and no one had gotten up. The planchette continued to move. T-R-A-P. "Trap," I whispered. "Help." "Trap?" Lucas pulled his hand away. "This is getting too weird." Erica and I still had our fingers on the board, and that's when we felt something different. The movement became firmer, faster, as if the hesitation had disappeared. The planchette seemed to know where to go. "What? Oh. You. The object stopped. It stayed there, in the middle of the board, like an eyelidless eye staring straight at us. "Who is trapped?" I ventured. The answer came immediately. N-O-T. The planchette went back to the center. Then it spun, directionless, as if it was spinning on its own. It was at that instant that we heard something dragging in the hallway. A clearer sound now, like something metallic being pulled across the wooden floor. The cameras were still on. The candlelight cast the shadow of the door on the floor, and for a second it seemed that the shadow was not aligned with the door. I got up impulsively and grabbed the flashlight. I pointed it towards the door. Nothing. But the sound had stopped the exact moment the light hit. Lucas also stood up, now visibly uncomfortable. "Let's stop, man. This isn't right. Just one more question," Erica said before I could speak. "Are you here now?" The planchette slid directly to Y, and at that moment, the remaining candle exploded with crackles, as if the wick had burned all at once. The room plunged into complete darkness for 2 seconds before my flashlight regained its power. Erica was silently crying. Lucas had his fists clenched, staring at the floor. The planchette was still on the board, but it had turned on its own, pointing directly at Lucas. Without saying anything, he grabbed his backpack and started packing his things. Not out of anger, not out of despair, but like someone who understands that they are no longer in control of the situation. I went after the central camera. When I looked at the screen, I realized that it had frozen halfway through the recording. The previous files seemed normal, but the session segment was corrupted. All black, no audio, as if nothing had happened. But we knew. As we exited the room, we heard the creak from upstairs again, now slower, more calculated, as if something was walking around there, aware that we were leaving. At the door, before crossing out of the house, I turned one last time. The planchette had returned to the center of the board, and for the first time, Lucas didn't look back at me. He didn't say anything, he just walked straight past, and I knew something had stayed with us. We didn't say anything on the way to the door. There was nothing to say. The silence felt too heavy, as if it was being carried along with us. But for some reason, no one crossed the threshold. We stood there, still, looking out of the house for a few seconds that felt too long. It was Lucas who broke the moment. "We're not going to end this like this, are we?" he asked, trying to sound in control. Erica didn't answer. Neither did I, because deep down I knew he wasn't wrong. There was something unfinished in that room, something that didn't want to be left alone. Without further discussion, we went back. The house no longer seemed the same. It was as if, after the first session, the place had subtly changed shape. The walls seemed closer, the sounds more muffled, as if the architecture itself was cornering us without us realizing it. We still had cameras recording, but the feeling was that whatever was observing now was something else. Lucas had been quieter since the previous session, but the change wouldn't last long. As I reviewed the little footage we had saved, cut segments, glitchy images, static audio, he sat on the floor, stretched his legs, and spoke in his usual sarcastic tone. "See? Not even spirits want to talk to us." Erica didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the window, which faced the backyard. Outside, the shadows of the trees danced with the wind, but there was something strange about the way she was watching, as if she expected one of those shadows to take shape and enter the house. The atmosphere was tense, and yet, when I suggested another attempt, no one protested. It was as if everyone knew it was already too late to pretend we hadn't crossed the line. We relit the candles. Only two now. The third was burnt out, unusable. We placed the board in the center again and sat around it. We didn't talk about what had happened before. We simply returned, as if a magnet had pulled us back to the same spot. "Okay, showtime," Lucas said, placing his fingers on the planchette with exaggerated flair. He put on a concentrated face and rolled his eyes as if he were being possessed. "Oh, great spirit of darkness, show me the heavenly Wi-Fi password." It was idiotic. It was childish. But even so, I laughed. Just for a second. Then I looked at Erica, and she wasn't laughing. She was looking at Lucas as if he had said something truly dangerous. "Lucas, stop it," I said, in a drier tone than I intended. "Come on, guys, this is all just theater. You don't think that—" A loud crack interrupted him. It came from the hallway, a dry crack, like wood breaking, then another, a stronger one. The cameras were still recording, or at least, that's what we thought. An automatic click sounded from the central camera, and one of the LED lights flickered for 3 seconds, then went out. The planchette didn't move. Nothing responded. It was as if even the board was offended. Lucas scratched his head and tried to laugh again. Okay, my bad. Let's do it right then. Focus." We started again. We placed our hands on the planchette, and we asked the same question as before. "Is anyone here with us?" Silence. Long, no breeze, no candle flickering, just the sound of our breathing. Suddenly, a door slammed upstairs. A single, violent bang, as if someone had closed it too hard. I got up on impulse, but immediately sat back down. I was dizzy. It wasn't normal vertigo. It was a dense dizziness, as if the floor had moved beneath my feet. My vision flickered for an instant. The candlelight flickered. Erica started to murmur something. At first, I didn't realize what it was. But then I understood. She was praying, in a low voice, with effort. "Our Father who art in heaven." Her voice faltered. She stammered, as if the prayer didn't want to come out, as if it was stuck inside her. The flashlight's light flickered twice, then it came back on. And then we heard it, a muffled sound. Coming from the camera, it wasn't static, it was something more human, like breathing. I put the headphones on to confirm. That was it, a slow, deep breath, too close to the microphone, as if someone had leaned over it, very close. I didn't say anything. I just took off the headphones. I looked at Lucas. He was still forcing a smile, but his eyes didn't follow. He knew something was wrong. We all knew. We tried to continue. Even with the discomfort, even with the cutting silence, we kept our fingers on the board. The planchette finally moved, with a subtle tremor, as if hesitating. But this time it didn't go to any letter. It just spun, slowly in imperfect circles. 3 turns, 4, 5, and stopped. I asked, "Are you playing with us?" "Nothing." Lucas cleared his throat and tried to lighten the tension. At least it has a sense of humor. The flashlight's light flickered again, stronger, as if it was about to burn out. Erica was staring fixedly at the board, as if expecting something specific, and that's when it happened. The air grew denser, heavier. A strange smell emerged, not mold nor dust. It was something more metallic, like iron, like damp rust. My stomach churned, and for a moment, I thought I was going to vomit. From upstairs, the sound of footsteps, not knocks, not creaks, footsteps, slow, dragging, one at a time, as if someone was sliding their feet across the old floor. Lucas lifted his head and held his breath. For the first time since we started, he didn't open his mouth. Not a joke, not a provocation. It was as if the laughter had frozen, and the silence that followed hurt. Lucas was the first to take his fingers off the planchette, and that's when we made the mistake. We didn't say goodbye. Maybe it was the strange atmosphere, the growing discomfort, or just mental exhaustion. But the simple act of ending the session went unnoticed, and the board stayed there, open, like a half-open door, waiting for the right wind to finally slam shut. We stayed silent, each absorbed in themselves, until the side camera started making a low noise, an irregular hum, as if the microphone was picking up something, but something that wasn't coming from any specific place. I went over and looked at the screen. The image was distorted. The center of the frame seemed pulled, as if someone had messed with the pixels by hand. But what gave me chills was the sound. I put on the headphones and heard breathing, slow, wet, as if someone was very close to the microphone, inhaling heavily, but without emitting any words. "Lucas," I called, "come see this." He approached, but instead of reacting with a joke, he just stared at the screen. "Was this recording?" he asked. I nodded. "Someone's behind you," Erica murmured. I turned quickly. Nothing, just a wall. But she kept looking in my direction, as if she saw beyond what her eyes could. And that's when everything started to go wrong. The flashlight flickered and went out completely. The 2 candles wavered and extinguished at the same time, as if they had been blown out from within. The room plunged into a darkness so dense it felt solid. By instinct, I turned on the camera's flash. It illuminated for a second and captured a blur in the corner of the room. I immediately reviewed the image. It was a dark, vertical smudge, almost human, but I couldn't tell what it was, and strangely, it seemed to be facing away from us. At that exact moment, the front door closed on its own. Oi! The bang was so loud it made the wall tremble. Lucas flinched. Erica screamed. I ran to the door and tried to open it. Locked, even without a lock. "This isn't right," I shouted. "We need to get out of here." Erica was trembling. She was kneeling in the corner, muttering something I couldn't understand. Lucas paced back and forth, repeating that it wasn't possible, that we had done everything right. But we hadn't, and I knew it. We hadn't said goodbye. In the confusion, the central camera fell from the tripod and hit the floor. The sound echoed like thunder, and then came absolute silence. No external sound, no breeze, no creaking from the house, just silence. And in that silence, we heard the laughter, low, deep, almost whispered. It came from close by, from somewhere in the room. A dry, emotionless laugh, as if it was mocking us. Lucas froze, his eyes wide, his body static. I called him, touched his shoulder, but he didn't respond. "Lucas," I said again. He slowly turned his face to me and smiled. But it wasn't his smile. His eyes didn't blink. The corners of his mouth stretched too wide. It seemed more like a reflection than a reaction. Erica slowly stood up. She looked at him and then at me. "He's not here anymore." I took a step back. Lucas watched us, but he seemed absent, as if he were behind his own eyes. The flashlight suddenly clicked back on, illuminating everything at once. And Lucas blinked. He took a step back and fell onto the floor, breathing heavily. What was that?" he asked, dazed. I didn't answer. No one answered. We just knew something had passed through him. Lucas sat on the floor, breathing fast, his hands on his legs. It was as if he had returned from somewhere no one else had seen. His face sweaty, his skin pale, his eyes still fixed on a point on the ceiling. "Did you see that?" he asked, but didn't even wait for an answer. I didn't know what to say. Neither did Erica. She slowly approached, extended her hand, and carefully touched his shoulder. He didn't pull away, but he also didn't react. I picked up the board and put it in my backpack without saying anything. The planchette was separate, in a cloth bag. I don't know why. I just felt I shouldn't leave them together. The sound of the door reappeared, now more subtle, as if someone was pushing it slowly, just to test. This time, the doorknob turned on its own. I opened it forcefully. Nothing on the other side. The night outside seemed even darker. No sound from the forest, no wind. Just a heavy silence that walked with us. We left the house without looking back. But as we walked back along the trail, I had the strange feeling that we were being followed. Not by footsteps, but by thoughts. As if each of us carried a fragment of that thing out. As if, by laughing, we had given something in return, and the worst of all that was that we didn't know what. We laughed, and the laughter was returned with a silence that hurt. We didn't talk much on the way back. The silence between us was no longer out of fear, it was out of doubt. As if each of us was trying to understand what exactly had happened in there, and worse, what could still happen. The next morning, Lucas looked exhausted. He said he hadn't slept, that he woke up every hour with the feeling that someone was in the room. He didn't call it a nightmare, but he also couldn't describe exactly what he saw. He just said that there were eyes where there shouldn't be eyes. Erica texted me early. She hadn't slept either. She said she dreamed of someone or something spelling out letters in a drawn-out voice. Z-O. Z-O. She woke up crying. The sound was still in her head, repeating even after waking up. I went straight to my laptop. I searched, and it didn't take long. All I had to do was type Ouija ZOZO, and the screen filled with reports. It wasn't an isolated case. Not 2. Not 10. There were hundreds. People from different places, different countries, telling strikingly similar things. When Zozo appeared, my house's power went out and didn't come back for 3 days. My dog never entered my room again. My brother fainted with a nosebleed after the name Zozo appeared on the board. It starts by spinning the pointer, then it comes straight with the name. You don't summon Zozo, he's already listening. I read all of it and felt my stomach clench. Those words seemed to stick to my eyes, as if someone wanted me to keep reading, as if it was too late to turn back. I called Erica. She answered on the first ring. You're researching too, aren't you? I asked. Silence. Then a whisper. Since 6 in the morning. Lucas only responded in the group with a short message. I need to understand what happened. The answer hung in the air. There was no confirmation, no plans, just emptiness. But somehow, by late afternoon, we were all back in front of the same house. No one said, let's go. No one said yes. It was as if something had pulled us back, as if it was still incomplete, as if the session hadn't ended. We returned to the abandoned house the following afternoon. The daylight didn't help at all. The place seemed even emptier, more dead, as if it had sucked something out of us the night before. We went straight to the session room. We repositioned the cameras, this time being careful to point them at every corner. We turned on the recorders, checked the battery. Everything under control. The board was in the same place we left it, inside the backpack. I took the planchette out of its separate bag. It was cold, colder than usual. We sat down. Our breathing held. No one said anything. We placed our fingers on the planchette. Is anyone here with us? I asked. Nothing. I waited a few seconds. Do you want to talk to us? The planchette moved, slowly, very slowly. It went to Z. I stopped breathing for a second. Then it went to O. Lucas looked at me, not understanding. It went back to Z. And finally, O, Z, O, Z, O. I took my hand off the planchette as if I had touched a hot blade. It's him. It's always him. There are dozens of similar reports on Reddit. It's always Zozo. Erica started to tremble, literally. Her shoulders moved up and down slowly, as if each breath was an effort. The planchette started to spin on its own, in slow circles, first 3 turns, then 5, then faster, until it stopped, directly on a single word, no. The cameras started to hiss. It wasn't ordinary static. It was a distorted, muffled noise, as if someone was trying to speak through the sound. I ran to the laptop and turned up the volume. The hiss grew stronger, and then, between the noises, a distorted word, as if spoken underwater. Repeated 3 times, Zo, Zo, Zo. I turned to Lucas. He was staring fixedly at the corner of the room, his mouth open, not blinking. Lucas, I called. Nothing. Lucas. He started to laugh, low, then louder. But it wasn't a normal laugh. It was high-pitched, drawn out. There was no pause. It sounded like an old recording playing on a loop, and he wouldn't stop. His body trembled, his eyes wide. Stop it, I shouted. He didn't respond. He just laughed. The laughter echoed through the room. And even with the windows closed, it seemed to come from every corner. If you know Zozo, you already know it's too late. If you've never heard, pray it stays that way. Lucas wouldn't stop. The sound of the laughter no longer matched his face. It was as if it was being reproduced by something else. His body laughed, but his eyes didn't. His eyes were empty, fixed on a point in the corner of the wall, as if someone was there, and only he could see it. Lucas, look at me, I yelled. Erica approached crying, pulled him by the shoulders. When she did, he let out a scream, not of fright, but of pain, as if he had been forcibly torn from where he was. He fell backward, breathing heavily, his mouth trembling, his eyes lost. What happened? I asked, but he just shook his head as if trying to push away a thought that was still inside. I saw him there. He pointed to the corner. We went there, nothing, just shadow. He was crouched, looking at me. I couldn't stop. He laughed and got inside my head. The cameras continued recording, but the central display screen showed glitches. Horizontal lines, dancing pixels. The voice that kept repeating Zozo disappeared, but something worse took its place. A very low whisper, saying something none of us wanted to repeat. I was the only one who stayed up late that night. The others left. I took the material with me, the memory cards, the audio files, the board. I couldn't sleep. I reviewed the files until sunrise, and in one of the videos, I swear, for 2 seconds, between one cut and another, something passed behind me. It wasn't a reflection, it wasn't a glitch, it was a silhouette. Thin, bent, almost crawling, and the eyes were 2 white dots that didn't blink. I paused the video and turned everything off. But even with the devices off, the voice continued inside my head. Zozo, Zozo, Zozo. I spent the entire day trying to forget what I saw in that video, but the image came back every time I blinked. That silhouette dragging itself behind me, as if it knew it was being filmed, as if it wanted to be seen. In the late afternoon, Erica showed up at my house. We hadn't planned anything, she just arrived. She brought the board with her. She had taken it back before leaving the night before. "We need to finish this," was all she said. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say we had already crossed the line. But I said nothing. I just let her in. Lucas arrived an hour later. He was quieter than usual, with deep, dark circles under his eyes and a faint scratch on his neck. "Did that happen in your sleep?" I asked. He looked at me and, for the first time, didn't joke. He just shook his head slowly. We set everything up again, on the living room floor of my house. Lights off, one candle lit, and the audio recorder, this time without cameras. We just wanted to know, we just wanted to finish it. The candle flickered as if in a draft, even with all the windows closed. We placed our fingers on the planchette. "If you are here, say something." The pointer moved immediately. Z-O, Z-O. And this time it didn't spin. It went straight to the word yes. Erica gasped. She was pale. "What do you want from us?" The planchette moved slowly, letter by letter. P-A-S-S-A-G-E. "Passage to where?" I asked. No answer. "Who are you?" Silence. And then the pointer moved violently. It slid so fast it almost came off the board. It spun in circles until the candle went out on its own. The room plunged into total darkness. Lucas jumped up, fumbling along the wall. "Light, turn on the light," he screamed. But the switch didn't work. None of them. Not the one in the kitchen, nor the one in the hallway. The only sound was the recorder still running, a continuous mechanical click, almost muffled by our rapid breathing. "Enough," Erica said. "We need to finish this." She reached out for the planchette, but it was hot, truly hot, as if it had been placed over fire. "There's something here," Lucas said, staring at the ceiling. "I hear it. It's walking up there." I heard it too. Slow footsteps, as if something very heavy was moving directly above our heads. Then came the sound, a sharp noise on the recorder. But this time it was a voice, not a hiss, not a whisper. It was a sentence. "He is already among you." The recorder fell to the floor on its own, and the board's pointer, even without our fingers, began to move again. Slower now, almost respectful. "Zio again, Zio." We stood still. "We need to say goodbye," I murmured. "We need to end it." But the pointer went straight to no, 3 times. No, no, no. The candle relit on its own, and then, on the wall, the shadow. It wasn't one of ours. It was larger, stretched, like a crack in reality itself. It moved, and disappeared. The woo silence that remained was unnatural. It was dense, it pressed on our ears, and no one spoke. That night we slept together in the same place, for the first time in years, not for safety, but for fear of being alone. We didn't talk about the board anymore, nor about the name, but we all knew. He no longer needed to be summoned, he no longer needed to be spelled out. He was already among us. The next morning, the board was gone. I rummaged through the living room, checked the kitchen, the bedroom, even looked in the trash can outside. Nothing. I called Erica. She swore she didn't take it. Lucas also denied it. And for a moment, no one said anything, because we all thought the same thing. He took it. I started noticing small things changing inside the house. The hallway light flickered, even with the new bulb. My cell phone rang with random numbers, but when I answered, only silence. Or worse, a long, patient breath, as if waiting for me to speak first. Voice notifications on WhatsApp started to arrive, seconds-long audios, nameless, no contact, no origin, always the same sound. 4 letters spelled out in a voice that was neither masculine nor feminine. Z-O-Z-O. And then, silence. It was as if the name was trying to make its presence felt through every possible means. And we no longer knew if the problem was with the house, with the board, or with us. The first night after the last session was the quietest since everything began. But it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was that kind of silence that makes you realize you're being watched, even when you're alone. Especially when you're alone. I couldn't sleep. Every house noise seemed amplified. The ticking of the clock on the wall became a deafening thud. The wind rattling the window sounded like nails scraping on glass. Everything seemed too present. The next morning I went to review the recording files. I wanted to confirm if what we saw and heard was real or if we were all falling into some kind of mass hysteria. But the folder with the audio files was corrupted. All the files had scrambled names, repeated letters, as if they were words, but they weren't. Zozo. Zozo. Every time I tried to open one of them, I only heard noise. But one in particular, named only Zio, had something more. A deep, continuous sound that seemed to come from a very large, very empty room. It was like a growl, but rhythmic, pulsating. And in the background, an almost inaudible voice said, "He's near, he's near, he's near." I turned everything off. Hours later, Lucas showed up at my house. He was different. He walked slowly but with heavy steps. His eyes were sunken but restless, as if searching for something in every corner of the room. I asked if he was okay. He responded with a slight smile that didn't match his tired face. "Did you sleep?" I asked. He took a while to answer. He speaks, but only when everything is dark. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't need to. Later, Erica arrived. She said she didn't want to go to the abandoned house anymore. She said she felt his presence, even from afar. That sometimes she would wake up with the weight of a hand on her shoulder. But there was no one in the room. No sound. Just that weight. As if someone was there, watching and touching, without permission. Even so, we went back to the house. Why? Even I can't say. Maybe it was a need for answers. Maybe it was just the cycle repeating itself. It was late afternoon. The overcast sky gave the forest a grayer tone than usual. The trees weren't swaying. The wind made no sound. The house was the same, but different. The peeling paint seemed darker, the floor more uneven. The windows, all closed, but one of them trembled, as if something vibrated inside. We went up cautiously. The stairs seemed more fragile than ever. Lucas went ahead. When he passed the living room door, he stopped. "It's colder in here. Do you feel it?" Erica nodded. I did too. We set up the equipment. The flashlights were charged. The cameras with new cards, the recorders doubled up. Everything was checked twice. And still, everything failed. The first flashlight went out 5 minutes later. Then the audio. The recorder simply froze, and the camera caught something. On the third recording attempt, while Lucas was talking to the board, even without our hands on it, a shadow passed behind him. Quick, low. The camera lost focus for 2 seconds, and when it returned, Erica was standing in the corner, staring into nothing. She started to cry, but it wasn't loud crying. It was as if she was dissolving from within. He's touching me," she whispered. I ran to her, touched her arm. It was icy cold, almost purple. "We need to get out," I said. Lucas wasn't reacting. He kept looking at the board as if hypnotized. "Lucas, let's go. Now." He didn't answer. I took 2 steps towards him, stretched out my arm, and then the door slammed shut behind us with a bang. Such a strong impact that the floor trembled. I turned with a jump, my heart pounding. "Did you do that?" I shouted, already expecting him to laugh or make some provocation. But Lucas just smiled. A thin smile, toothless. "I didn't close the door," he said. He did. The tension hung in the air, like a rope stretched to its limit. No one moved for a few seconds, as if any false step could break something invisible and irreversible. Lucas slowly stood up, still smiling, still not blinking. "He likes the dark room," he said, almost in a whisper. Erica cowered against the wall, pulling her jacket tighter as if the cold had penetrated her bones. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if it had locked from the inside, even without a lock. "Stop playing, Lucas. Open it now." He just pointed to the camera. "Is it recording? We don't want to miss this, do we?" I didn't answer. I was busy trying to hide the panic on my face. It was then that, for the first time, I noticed the red light on the camera had also gone out. All the equipment had failed. All of it. The only thing that worked was the recorder, and it began to emit an irregular noise like a heartbeat, out of rhythm. Bum, 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 bum. "He wants to play," Lucas repeated, this time looking directly at me. Something in his expression changed. It was no longer sarcasm. It wasn't irony. It was as if he had forgotten who he was, as if he had become just a channel, a vessel. "What the hell is happening to you, man?" But he didn't answer. He just walked to the center of the room, knelt, and placed his fingers on the board. Alone. "Want to play?" The pointer moved. On its own. Z-O, Z-O. And then it spun so fast that it flew off the board, hitting the wall hard enough to crack. The paint. Erica screamed. I pulled Lucas by the arm. He turned his eyes wide, as if he had woken from a deep dream, or emerged from underwater. What was that? I didn't say anything. I just pushed him out of the room, this time with the door opening easily. We ran down, almost stumbling on the steps. The air outside felt heavier than the air inside, and even with all that, we knew it wasn't over yet. That dawn was long. None of us could sleep properly. I called Erica shortly after 3. She was awake, her voice trembling. Lucas wasn't answering. The next morning, when the sun had barely risen, they both showed up at my house. No message, no plan. We just appeared. And when night fell again, we were all there, in the same place, in the same silence. It was as if we knew he would come again. The living room clock read 3:17 a.m. when I woke up and saw Lucas sitting on the couch in front of the window, not blinking. The lights were off. The only light came from the street, faint, almost bluish. He was whispering something, but I couldn't understand. "Lucas, are you okay?" He didn't answer. I kept approaching slowly. When I was a few feet away, I clearly heard what he was saying. "He wants to play again. He wants to play again. He wants to play." Erica appeared at the bedroom door, pale, holding her cell phone. "I just got this," she said, her voice trembling. On the screen, an audio message with no sender. Duration, 4 seconds. She pressed play. Z-O, Z-O. The voice was the same as the previous recording, but now, in the background, you could hear something different, like wood being scraped, as if someone was dragging an immense fingernail against a closet door. Slow, continuous, intrusive. Lucas slowly turned around. "You heard him too?" His face no longer looked tired. It looked absent, as if Lucas was looking from behind that body, trying to get out, or trying to get back in. After that, no one could sleep. The next day, we returned to the abandoned house. For the last time, we entered at dusk. This time, we didn't bring cameras, nor recorders, just a flashlight, a candle, and the board was there, in the room, waiting. We lit the candle. It went out twice before the flame steadied. We sat in silence. None of us spoke. We just placed our fingers on the planchette. Z, O-Z-O. Before we asked anything, the pointer moved on its own. T-H-E-I-R-S. "Whose?" I asked. The pointer went straight to all. The flashlight flickered. The candle flame grew, stretching shadows against the walls. And for a second, we saw it. We saw a figure standing in the hallway. It had no face. It had no defined form. It was like a piece of the darkness itself, gaining thickness. Lucas started to laugh, but it was a laugh without sound, a laugh that hurt just to hear. Erica fell to her knees. She covered her ears, started to pray, but the words wouldn't come out. It was as if her voice had been ripped from her. I got up and yelled for us to leave. I ran to the door. I pulled Erica down the stairs, stumbling on the steps, hitting the handrail, hearing the creak of the wood behind us. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see what was coming. I just wanted to get out. But when we reached the door, Lucas wasn't with us. I stopped, I turned, and I saw. He was there, standing at the top of the stairs, his eyes fixed on us, his breathing slow, his mouth slightly open. "Lucas," I shouted, "come now!" Nothing. I went back up, against instinct, against fear. I grabbed him by the arm. For a second it felt as if I was touching cold stone. But he blinked, and when he looked into my eyes, it was him. Lost. But it was still him. "Let's go, man." He didn't answer, but he came down with me, step by step, like a sleepwalker pulled back into his body. Outside, the sky was too dark, no wind, no sound. The forest seemed dead. We got in the car. Erica was trembling. Lucas, in the back seat, remained silent, his eyes fixed on nothing. He wasn't blinking. When the engine started, the radio turned on by itself. It was off station, full of static, but between the crackles, a sequence, almost a whisper. Z-O, Z-O. We got home with the sun almost rising. We locked everything. We closed the windows. We thought we had left the board there, but it was in the back seat. Lucas swears he didn't take it. Neither did I. And Erica just cried, looking at it as if it were a trap, as if touching it meant accepting something. We put it in a box, sealed it with tape, locked it in the closet. But we still heard the sound, the wood scraping, the letters, spelling. In the following days we barely spoke, not for lack of will. It was as if speaking would make everything more real, as if naming what we saw would bring it back. Lucas started sleeping on my couch. He said he couldn't stay home anymore, that the mirrors had started to breathe. Erica wouldn't leave her room. When she did, it was to take a cold shower. She said it was the only way to silence the heat inside her body. And I started recording myself sleeping. In one of those recordings, I woke up to my own voice whispering, "He's still here." But that wasn't even the worst part. It was seeing that, while I was talking in my sleep, Lucas was standing behind me, still, eyes open, breathing slowly. The recording ends with a click, as if someone had manually turned off the camera. We tried to go back to the house, days later. The road was the same. The dirt entrance, identical. But upon arriving, it was as if we had never been there. The house was empty, no marks on the floor, no table, no candle, not even disturbed dust. No sign of the session, not even of us. It was the same house, and at the same time, it wasn't. And now, even together, even awake, we feel him close, in the mirror, in the window, in the sound of the radio that turns on by itself. The worst part isn't knowing that he's still in the house. It's knowing that maybe now he's in all of them. If you've made it this far, it's because you felt something. Maybe it was just curiosity. Maybe you felt his eyes too. If you did, comment below. I saw what was behind you. We read all comments, especially at night. And if you want more stories like this, real, disturbing, and that no one else dares to tell, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and share this video with someone who would doubt all of this. Just be careful, because sometimes he comes with the video, and at 3:17 a.m., you might not be alone anymore. I can still hear the planchette moving inside the closet.